everyone, today you are joining us from in front of St. Isaac's Cathedral. We are about to go inside and on top of the colonnade and have a panoramic view of St. Petersburg. The architect of this cathedral is Montferrand, and you can see some similarities between the dome on the top of this cathedral and the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., designed by the same architect. So now we are entering the staircase to climb the colonnade. So you can see it's like a stone tower, stone steps, and we're climbing and we're counting stairs. So here we're nearing the top. So we finished with the stone stairs, and now there's a little metal staircase, and we've practically reached the top. Now at this part, we're going to climb this metal staircase. I'm not the biggest fan of heights, so climbing that staircase where you can see through the stairs is actually like quite a torture that I subject myself to yearly. But you need to move past your fears and push ahead. Builds character. You can see the Angleterre Hotel to the right. You can see the city government building. You can also see that right down here, this is the Blue Bridge. So you see there's a river there, and all of this is a bridge. All of these cars are parked on the bridge, and it's called the Blue Bridge. It's the widest bridge in Europe. And right here, as Konstantin just said, is the monument to Nicholas, who became known as Ramrod Nick. So we have the Angleterre Hotel and also the Hotel Astoria. And in addition to the fame of Hitler way before that, in 1920 the poet Yesenin hung himself in one of the rooms here. You can see this grassy field right below, and during the siege time this field was actually used to grow cabbages when there was no food in the city. You see some workers doing some restoration project, working high above the city. What are they working on? So here's the western view of the city. You can see these construction cranes way in the distance, and also far in the distance you can see the Gulf of Finland and the Neva River. So this gray building that you can see below is the manege. It's where the horses used to be ridden, and the military would practice their riding skills. Horses would be kept there, and now it's an art exhibition hall. Straight ahead, the yellow building that you can see is the building of the Senate and Senad, and right now houses the Yeltsin National Library as well as the Supreme Court. Right across the river, as I zoom in, you can see Menshikov Palace, and this is where the best friend of Peter the Great lived. He had a palace built for him. Right now it's also an art museum and palace that can be toured. While Peter the Great was living in a wooden hut, he had built this palatial residence for his friend Menshikov. And as we scan down the river, we can see St. Petersburg State University, which is the main university of St. Petersburg, and the building of the 12 academies. As we scan farther down the river, you can see right here, housed in the blue building, is the museum now called Kunstkamera. And I'll have another video in the series all about Kunstkamera, which is the first museum in the city, which was started by Peter the Great. With this view on the city, we have a northern view. From this side, we have a view of the palace. And straight ahead, right here, we can see the palace square. You can see the church on spilled blood. And several other hotels and restaurants and apartment buildings. Here off in the distance, Peter and Paul Fortress and the Peter and Paul Cathedral, of course. Descending up again on the stone steps. Let's get a glance down. And we are walking. It's about 250 steps to the top or bottom, obviously. I'd like to just ask you to pay attention to this granite colonnade right here. It was left in disrepair like this as a sign of World War II. This was damaged. You can see right here there's another one that's been repaired. And also some of the steps they've also left unrestored, just as a symbol of what the city has gone through. So this is one of the biggest Russian Orthodox cathedrals in Russia for sure, and probably in all of Europe. Hello, now we find ourselves inside of St. Isaac's Cathedral, and you can see right here to the side, we'll show you a diorama of how the cathedral was built and how the columns were stood up. And this model shows you just how the columns were stood. It's a Russian Orthodox cathedral, one of the largest in Europe and the largest Russian Orthodox cathedral in Russia. After the revolution, the cathedral was taken away from the church, and it served as a museum of atheism, later as a museum of religion. And now the church is a museum, so you can see marble icons, craftsmanship of all kinds. And as we approach the front, you'll see the main iconostasis, and to the left there's a small active cathedral chapel inside of the church. Here we're approaching the front, and you can see the main iconostasis actually takes up the entire front of the church. And if you look up right here, as I direct your attention above, you can see the main dome of the cathedral. And right in the center of this dome, we'll zoom in closer, you can see a dove. And the dove represents the Holy Spirit. And above the iconostasis, you can see artwork of the resurrection. We have stained glass behind of a resurrected Jesus. And below, icons of the main saints of the church. And right here you can see an icon of Saint Mary with Jesus. Here they have the doors of the iconostasis open, and you can get a glimpse of the altar. In the Russian Orthodox Church, only men are allowed behind these doors. There's the working chapel inside of the cathedral, where you can go and light a candle, say a prayer, also has its own smaller iconostasis and altar. So on a closing note, this cathedral was built by the architect Montferrand, who was the same architect that designed the Washington Capitol building. So it may look familiar, the big dome right behind me. The architect also positioned the Tsar at the time to be buried inside of the cathedral, as it was his latest work, and he was refused his burial inside of this cathedral. So there you have it, St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg, Russia.